Well, it's a real pleasure to welcome Rob Wright for a conversation today, a fireside chat as we think about how God prepares us in the wilderness. And I'm really excited to welcome Rob to this conversation. Rob has worked independently for 32 years as a copywriter and graphic designer in sunny Suffolk, and has brought his experience as an executive coach since 2006 center stage. He's the founder of Giant Life Skills and uses coaching, facilitation, training, and public speaking to share resilience tools and insights that support the mental and emotional well-being of workers, workplaces, and communities to help us feel bigger inside than our giants are outside and write stories we want to be in. When he's not running two companies, he's running bodyweight fitness classes in his local park, which I think he was doing this morning, and acting as a team chaplain for a church's 11-a-side soccer club and seeing if he can launch a social enterprise to bring the big idea of eliminating poverty to life. And we're going to delve a bit into that in this conversation. He's married with two sparkling adult daughters and lives with an all-white South Korean cat. It's really good to have you, Rob. How are you doing today?
Matt, thank you so much for this. Oh, yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. Yeah, we were out this morning working up a sweat
Your local park?
in a local park. It's a beautiful park. It's one of the walls and stuff. So it's a really special spot and a really special time. 7:15 in the morning. You're local. Do join us.
Well, it's really good to have this time with you, Rob. I'm really looking forward to hearing about this, especially this idea of launching a social enterprise to bring the big idea of eliminating poverty to life. So just talk to us a bit about this idea of eradicating poverty. Where's this come from? When did this first stir in you?
Well, I've been really interested in community resilience. How do we make our communities more resilient? So I've been really interested in that for years now. And a couple of years ago, I got involved with a project to tackle poverty. It's a project that was commissioned by our local county council, and they wanted to see what could be done to address that as a social concern. And I volunteered on the project, and we had a good time. And we ended up coming up with some recommendations, but I wondered if the recommendations went far enough. And so it kind of left me feeling a little bit uncomfortable. So I wrote down some ideas. The discomfort, I guess, was tackling poverty is a really big, thorny issue. And the temptation is to try to come up with solutions which are at the sharp end when people are in particular crisis. And so we want to make it a little easier for people to find housing or to collect their benefits or transition into social housing. And all of that stuff is really, really important. And when people are really struggling to keep their head above water, it's really important that we meet them at their point of need. But I felt that there could be so much more that we could do at the other end, upstream, perhaps to stop people from falling into the water to begin with. And so I wrote down some ideas, and the people who are facilitating the project decided, for whatever reason, to more or less print them verbatim in the report that they were producing. And so this report got produced. It went to the council, their health and wellbeing board, and they ratified the whole thing. So I thought, okay, great. What are we going to do now? Are these things just going to sit in the report, gathering dust, or am I going to try and bring them to life? And so the challenge then was, of course, what's next? And that's how the journey started. Rethinking about, what if we asked a different question? The question that we asked, how do we tackle poverty, gave us a particular set of answers. What if we asked a different question? How do we eliminate poverty? That would give us a different set of answers altogether. And that's how I came up with some of my ideas. And that's where we are now.
It's interesting thinking about, there's endless things that we can give our time to. You're already a busy guy. There's loads on your plate, and yet this idea has been bubbling away. How did you discern that maybe there's something of God in this leading you, guiding you? How can you tell the difference between a God idea or just a good idea?
Ah, um, I do like Paul's approach to guidance. So there's this passages in the book of Acts, isn't there, where Paul decides to go off on a missionary journey, and he says, right, we're off. And the Holy Spirit stops him. And then he decides to go off on another one, and the Holy Spirit stops him again. So my general approach to this is, we'll just try it. See what happens. God's a really good shepherd. He likes leading. He's really good at it. So let's trust him to lead. And if I'm barking up a wrong tree, if I'm a fish trying to climb a tree or something, he'll let me know. So just try something. Just do something. I think learning's in our hands. And I think I know it's true for me, it might be true for others too, that we can be guilty of analysis paralysis, really. Or worse, relying on the sin of certainty. We have to be absolutely sure, 100%, that God is in this, on this, before we make a move. And I think just being much more content with mystery and content with not knowing, I think is probably the best way forward, really.
That's fascinating, the idea of sin of certainty. We can sort of wait for that certainty before we move forward. It's interesting. What would you say as you've stepped out? You've already mentioned a little bit in your opening, the background that you to get you to this point. You already mentioned maybe some surprises. Where has God met you as you stepped out? Have there been any surprises? What have you seen God do as you've stepped out?
I've been able to have some interesting conversations with some interesting people that I wasn't expecting. So I had breakfast with the chief executive of CAT. So that was a thing, as a moment for me, actually. Why he would have that with me, just because on the back of my ideas, it just seemed quite unusual. So there are the moments like that where you think, okay, maybe God's up to something here. There are other moments where you begin to join the dots between your experience and things that have happened to you in the past, and something that God is putting across your path now. So those kind of coincidences, divine appointments, always kind of grab my attention. And yeah, they're just little moments, really. There's little flashes of grace that kind of make your heart tickle and think, you know what, I think maybe God's up to something here.
You mentioned earlier about the adoption of your report as well, which just sounded like that was a surprise.
Yeah, well, the whole report had a series of recommendations, but my addenda at the back didn't have to be there. And I'm not even sure today why it was included in the way that it was, because it was more or less verbatim as I wrote it. And they didn't have to include it. They didn't have to include me on the panel that presented the report to the Health and Wellbeing Board. I was invited to do that. On the back of that, I didn't have to be invited onto a panel to talk about the future of Suffolk and advocate for including people who are financially disadvantaged. And that only happened earlier this month. I didn't have to be included on that. So there are these moments where you feel, okay, maybe God's up to something here. And I just need to make sure that I'm in the position to receive whatever he wants to do.
And these flashes of grace, as you describe them, they presumably only act as fuel for the fire in your current trajectory. You're stepping out, you get some encouragement, and you from God, and it fuels further momentum in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. We can wait for those moments, though, can't we? We can wait for those flashes and rely on them. And the overall mission is that we're sent, that we're called to be salt and light. And so I rely on that. That's my plumb line. And anything else is a bonus and an extra, rather than having to need the constant encouragement and comfort of those moments.
Some of the challenges that you might have been facing as you've stepped out and towards this vision, what challenges have you faced?
Well, the challenge is to eliminate poverty, to tackle poverty. And I'm self-employed. And so God has not called me to this because I've got my financial life sorted out. And I think that's really, really important if I'm going to be coming alongside people who are financially disadvantaged and struggling. I don't think the testimony of, I was £100,000 in debt and I'm now a millionaire is going to wash that well. So, I have had a history of financial challenges myself. One of my biggest clients decided not to pay me the £37,000 that they owed me. And on the back of that, I didn't really get my head together. I couldn't find a way to reclaim those funds. And so I took a hit. And as a one-man band, that was a big hit for me. Didn't quite get my head together. And by the time I did, it was too late. And we ended up losing our home and we had to go into social housing. So some of those stories, some of that history has a way of haunting if you're not careful. And so one of the things I talk about in the resilience work that I do is it's really, really important to make peace with your story. Because unless you do that, your story will own you. And unless you make peace with your story, you can't write the next chapter. And so there's this very present challenge in all of this for me, of making sure that I'm not haunted by my past, by my history, going into this work, so that I'm grounded. And that's an idea that I bring to my coaching, as all coaches should really. We just need to be centered ourselves and secure in our own skin and our own story to be able to be of service and to be of use to somebody else in their journey. So there's that challenge, I think. On top of that, we're recent empty nesters. My youngest daughter has just moved out of the house, so I don't have her income coming into the home anymore. And on top of that, my wife has had she's been away for most of the year, nursing her sister, who unfortunately we've just lost. She's just lost. And so her income hasn't been in the household either. So it's an interesting time for us. But I guess the thing that I'm most reassured by is that if God calls you to something, he's going to make sure that he's going to provide for you. So my life is his. My life is his. I'm going to trust him with my life, whether I can see the way clearly up ahead or not. So I've learned that much. He's a really good father. And so one of the things that he's been encouraging me with this just the last few weeks actually is hold the line. And for me, that meant that it's the idea of covenant. There's a rope around God's waist, and the rope runs from him to me, and that rope is also attached around my waist. And the idea is that he's a covenant keeping God. He will never, ever let go of his end of the rope. And what he's asking me to do is to make sure that I don't let go of mine. So I don't lose my confidence. I don't lose my hope. I don't lose my faith. I don't lose my peace because of what's going on around me. He's asking me to hold the line because he's for sure not going to let go of his end.
Such a powerful image. I've been reflecting on Luke 11 recently, and you know, the friend who has someone come to visit him at night asking for some, you know, needing some hospitality. He hasn't got anything in the store cupboard, so he then goes to his friend who does have stuff in the store cupboard, and he won't give up, won't, you know, it's the middle of the night, and of course you remember the story where the parable where this other friend says that, you know, not because of his friendship, but because of his audacity, that will he get up and give him all he needs. But this idea that someone with an empty store cupboard goes to ask someone with a full store cupboard for some provision, for some help. And of course, it's an amazing picture of God, and he invites us in prayer to come and ask for all that we need. It's such a powerful image, and that idea of the covenant as well, that there's trust and freedom in that covenant relationship. Yeah, really, really powerful stuff. In this journey, what's helped you stay open to God's guidance as you consider the next steps in front of you? I mean, you've talked about flashes of grace. You see moments of God's fingerprints, you know, in the day-to-day, in decisions, things that have surprised you. How have you stayed open to God's guidance?
Desperation.
Say again. Desperation.
Desperation.
Okay.
Man, I need him. I really need him. If you're gonna, well, we just need him generally, don't we? Anyway, but especially if you're gonna try anything big, audacious, ridiculous, brassy, however you want to describe it, just need him. So I'm, one of the things I talk about in the resilience work that I do is that we're just people of cravings. It's part of human nature. We desire, we long for, we hunger and thirst. And so I'm just really hungry for God's wisdom in all of this and his help, because there's no way I can do this on my own. And there are any number of people who look at some of my ideas and they're very generous in their appreciation of them and even to the point of applauding them. But I can't do this on my own. I'm going to need a team. I'm going to need resources. So I'm right at the beginning of my journey. And so a lot of that needs to be settled and sorted out. But I'm going to need God's help with that. So yeah, so that is making me very keen to listen. And one of the things that I have a dear friend who I exercise with regularly, and one of the things that we talk about often is being interruptible. To notice when there's a little whisper or a little glint, and be willing to turn aside, to stop what we're doing, and to stay curious. What is that? Is that something I need to pay attention to? So that, I think, is I'm learning that. I'm beginning to practice that a little bit more often, because God doesn't shout. He's not. In my experience, anyway, I don't get angels and big signs in the sky and neon lights, whatever else. It's just this very, very quiet, still, small voice that I need to pay attention to if I'm going to hear from him.
You've said that you can't do it on your own, and you, in that little description, then you've also mentioned, a friend. You also trusted advisors in that, who've heard your ideas and your dreams of what could be. Are there other categories of people that you've turned to in this season of discernment and stepping out, and what have you received from each of those?
Yeah, I'm incredibly promiscuous. I'm when it comes to ideas, I'll go anywhere and everywhere for ideas. So I have been talking to people in the public sector, and because obviously they're very much hands-on and they know the landscape very well. So I've been leaning on them. I have an academic friend in the States who I don't spend enough time with, actually, but she's been an absolute godsend. Sarah, if you're listening, you're a mentor to me and I really appreciate you. And of course, there are those arm's length mentors, people who've written books and blogs and have YouTube channels. And so I'm all over those. So yeah, there are lots of them, absolutely. And I rely on them. You just can't do this sort of thing just drawing from your own well.
What's the role of the local church been in this as well, Rob?
Local church, they're involved with CAP, and some of them have been quite supportive when I've been speaking on panels and whatever else, and I've found some people to pray with on this, which has been a real help. I could do it more. Intercessors and people who pray on this could be. I love prayer, so praying with people for this sort of thing is again something that really helps recharge my batteries.
No, it's fabulous. The picture in the New Testament is one of interdependence, not codependence, not independence, but this idea that we need each other. This is the body of Christ, and in this stepping out seasons that God calls us into, and as we discern what He's leading us into, it's another time where we capture afresh that need for others in that journey.
So I describe in the work that I do resilience as a communal project. There are resources that are available to us that we have on tap from within, and those are great, and it's really important that we refine those skills and make sure that they're available when we need them the most. But there are resources around us where we're planted, relationships we have are just as helpful, just as useful, just as vital if we are going to be resilient and perform at our best when life appears to have taken a turn for the worse, so that we can write stories that we want to be in. So yeah, community, learning how to tap your network, whether it's weak ties, strong ties. Yeah, all of those skills are really, really important.
Have there been particular passages in Scripture that have been helpful in this time as you've stepped out that God might have used to envision you and guide you?
Yeah, several. I guess for me, I think it has to be. There is one though that really does stand out for me the most, and I think that's probably been seminal in catalyzing this whole thing for me. So there's this Isaiah 61 passage. We're all probably familiar with it, where the Spirit of the Lord is on me. It says in the passage because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news, good tidings to the poor. And then it goes on about, let me read from it, healing the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn. to console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they may be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. And so there's this outpouring of God's spirit available for people who are marginalized, suffering, struggling, harassed, helpless. But then it goes on to say in verse 4, and I think this is really telling, and they shall rebuild the old ruins. They shall raise up the former desolations. They shall repair the ruined cities, the desolations of many generations. So the question now is, who's they? Who are they? It's the people we've been reading about in verses 1, 2, and 3. The poor, the brokenhearted, the captives, those who are enchained, imprisoned, those who are mourning. They are the people. As God's Spirit is poured out on people who are walking with Jesus and doing the work that he's calling them to do, bringing justice, putting wrong things right, bringing healing, proclaiming liberty, bringing comfort and consolation, beauty for ashes, praise for a spirit of heaviness. The people who are in receipt of all of those graces, they get to rebuild ruined cities. System change. It comes from the people who are marginalized, oppressed, harassed, and helpless. For me, that I just thought, wow, wouldn't that be something? Anyway, let me talk personally. I want to be a part of that. I want, if that story is being written, if God wants to write that story, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And that stirs me to engage with this sort of work. Something redemptive, a redemptive revolution that sees people who are traditionally overlooked, traditionally undervalued, being released into their potential with value, with dignity. I want to be a part of that story.
It's great, Rob. It's great. And as people are listening to you, Rob, there'll be people being stirred by that vision, by that big picture. And you mentioned earlier about team. Like, what would you say to anyone out there that is looking to get involved or join in?
Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. I think it might not be, you don't have to do it with me. You may find opportunity to do it in your local network, wherever you are on the planet. Let's get some big things done, shall we? So, but if you do want to have a conversation with me, then let's have that. I've been in business for, as you said, for 30 odd years, and one of the things I'm learning, I have learned perhaps the hard way, that if we're going to work together, it needs to be more relational than transactional. And so the process is as important, if not more so, than the outcome. It's who you become on the journey that creates the capacity and the resilience to sustain the outcomes. So iron sharpens iron. There has to be a kind of synergy around values, if not vision. But beyond that, if you're a student, as I have to be with this sort of work, a student of people who have gone on before, been involved with social change projects on a big scale, what they tell us is that we don't have to, if we're going to get big things done, we can only go so far with people we know, like, and trust. If we are going to make a huge dent on some of these wicked problems, we're going to need to begin to think about radical collaboration, working with people we don't like, we don't know, we don't trust. And so I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone. If you feel an itch to get involved with this work, let's chat. You can hear from me.
It's fabulous, just the picture you've been painting. Obviously, Isaiah 61, it's such a powerful scripture. Jesus used that sort of as a at the start of his public ministry. I mean, it's amazing, and it's a ministry that we're called into as God invites us to play a part and tend the little piece of the garden that he's given us. And just thinking about this idea of eradicating poverty. I mean, that's a bold aim. Of course, it's a big vision. It's
a little brassy, yeah. Yeah.
What does that look like in the next, for you? What would ideally the next 12 months look like?
I think that it'd be really good to get a coalition of the willing. So I've often described poverty as an assault on value. Value, the people who are struggling financially are often challenged with their own self-worth and their own self-image and their own self-regard. But not only that, they're also challenged by how other people see them. And so there's this stigma around people who are financially challenged, and they feel it really acutely. And sometimes it's really visceral and really vivid when they're at a till and putting stuff back because they can't afford it, or they're in a shop going round and round trying to make decisions about how much they've got left to be able to put money on the meter. So there's a degree of compassion, I think, that's needed for this kind of work that doesn't involve judgment. And finding people, that coalition of the willing, who have that kind of grace and generosity, isn't easy. Who are prepared to put their hands to this plow and commit. So with a sense of agency that we actually can do something about this, that this isn't beyond us and that this isn't a fool's errand. So for over the next 12 months, it'd be really good to have that coalition of the willing, people who are non-judgmental, but also just bold. This is something that's really big. So I called my business, my resilience practice, Giants, because our giants don't defeat us because they're too big. They defeat us because they make us feel small. And when we're feeling small, we have this tendency to shrink and to hide. And we stop entering spaces as we are in our full stature, in our full potential. And it'll be really good to have that arsenal of people, whether it's a few or whether it's many, who are able to look at this hydra-headed beast, this thing called poverty, and say, you know what? I think we can take this on. I think we can put it, at the very least, put a dent in this thing. My vision is that we start something that we don't see the fruit of in our own lifetimes. My guess, this is a 40, 50, 80 year project.
Mm.
I might not be around for that. I probably won't be around for that. So we're going to need to pass the baton on to someone. We're going to need to put something in place that's scalable, that other people can run with. What does that look like? Can we, over the next 12 months, to answer your question, lay the foundations for all of that?
No, that's great. And you talk about this, 12 months, but also beyond that, 30, 40 and beyond years. I mean, society is changing rapidly. I'm thinking about AI, particularly is, rapidly changing society. Some are bullish on that and thinking this is going to be a usher in an age of abundance for everyone. And others are sort of more cautious and dystopian about, the polarities that actually will increase, and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So, any thoughts on the role of technology in this conversation that we've been having?
Digital literacy and digital deserts are a real thing for people who are on the margins.
Mm.
We have systems that encourage you to apply for housing, social housing online. And sometimes people who are struggling financially don't have phones, don't have digital devices. So they can't apply for social housing.
Mm.
So tech and dealing with digital deserts, so it's going to be a challenge going forward. Yes, AI is going to change the complexion of work without a shadow of a doubt. But there are some, so in the resilience work that I do, I have a strengths-based approach to all of it. Rather than starting with the problems and the issues, start with strengths. And there are some things that AI can't do that humans can do really, really well. Empathy, compassion, care. People have tried getting therapy through their AI chatbots. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's a semblance of soothing and comfort, but it's not context. It's not able to read context. It's not able to read social cues. It's not able to understand exactly where you're at and provide the kind of challenge that's necessary. It's not able to discern nuance. There are skills that we have as people that AI can't and won't be able to replicate. Those are the strengths that exist in communities that are marginalized, as well as in other places. We can harness those skills to make sure that everybody gets to play, every voice is heard, and nobody gets left behind. There will be a challenge going forward with AI, but I think we have a challenge as a society about how we want to do life and work together. That challenge is a bigger challenge than just specific demographics. And if we can get that right, I think we'll be able to answer the challenge about how that impacts people on the margins, particularly those who are financially challenged, with a bit more grace and a bit more insight and wisdom.
Just a moment ago, you talked a bit about Giant, your business, and that it was founded on the premise that this idea of us in the face of giants feel smaller, we're diminished. How prevalent is that, would you say? Obviously you feel like there's quite a lot of people that battle with that at different points, because you set up a business to address some of that. I'm thinking particularly of this idea of there'll be people watching this that have visions that might be, similar dreams, but yet they might not feel like they've got the skills. But is this something that you see across the board? Will all of us battle with this at different points?
So again, in the work that I do, I say that we're story-making creatures. We use story to make sense of ourselves, the world, and our place within it. The challenge is, are those stories serving us? Or are they sitting on us in a way that restricts us from flourishing? And what I find universally is that some of us have some great stories. We're telling ourselves great stories because we understand our privilege, whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's the side of the tracks that we were born on. We understand our privilege. Some of us are running races where we feel like other people have started on the starting line and we're still putting on our kit. We've got some catching up to do. And resilience is about drilling down into that story, into that narrative, into that software that's running our operating system, and making sure that it serves us really, really well. So one of the things, again, I talk about is that we need to stop seeing ourselves through the eyes of people who never saw us. And having that kind of wit and being able to create that kind of distance between the inciting incident and our response is really part of the discipline of being resilient. So that we can think and interrogate, okay, what's this story that I'm telling myself? Where's it coming from? And what's it ultimately leading to? And is this the story I want to write for my life? And having agency in that is an incredibly powerful thing. And helping people to have those light bulb moments where they're feeling, actually, I don't have to suffer this anymore. I don't have to tolerate this anymore is really part of the joy of the work that I get to do. So yeah, I do feel it's quite universal. That story, we are story-making creatures. But the good news is that we are resilient. We find ways of coping. We find ways of muscling through life. Here, the challenge, of course, now is, let's turn that coping into surviving, and surviving into thriving and flourishing.
We're coming to land. Rob, just if there's someone watching this and they're sitting on a dream, a passion, vision, they see something that they sense God might be stirring to them, and yet maybe their feet are kind of stuck at the moment. What would you say to them to help them take a next step?
Can I leave them with a story? It's a short story.
Yeah.
It's a true story. And it's something that's right at the core of the resilience work that I do. And I think it's really, really helpful. There's a chap who lived at the junctions of the 19th and the 20th centuries. His name is F.W. Borum. And we know this from his journals. And he wrote about, he's a British Methodist minister, if I'm not mistaken. And he's in New Zealand on mission. And he's just out for a walk. And he sees this wall, and he notices it's a kitchen garden wall, and he looks over the kitchen garden wall, and he sees this scarecrow. And it's got its arms outstretched, and funnily enough, it's got a bird sitting on one arm, and it's got another bird sitting on the other, and birds are supposed to be scared of scarecrows, right? So this tickles him, of course. But in the flash of inspiration, he says to himself, I'm going to call that bird the foolish bird. I'm going to call that bird the wise bird. And if I was a foolish bird, I would fly around, listen to my fears, see a scarecrow, listen to my fears, and fly away. But if I was a wise bird, I would fly around looking for scarecrows. And because despite my fears, I would realize and I would know that there's treasure waiting for me hidden in the field. If you're intimidated by the size of your giant, of your vision, which is leading to inertia, the fear is coming not from incapability, it's coming from inexperience. So the invitation I would encourage people to consider is listen to your fears. They're valid. You don't know what you're doing. You haven't done this before, but we are hardwired for struggle. Everything that we want, or everything that we've ever been able to do, has been on the other side of hard things. This is how we do life. So everything that we want that's truly worthwhile is on the other side of hard things. Pay attention to the fears, but don't let them immobilize you, because there's treasure waiting for you on the other side of that feeling. There's reward. So I would encourage anybody listening in to pay attention to that signal, but move forward anyway. Expecting a reward.
It's great, Rob. Rob, it's been fabulous to hear from you and hear something of your journey and your vision and your hopes, your dreams, God's guidance in the process as well. If people want to follow up with you, where is the best place to connect with you?
I have a website address which points to a LinkedIn page at the moment, so you can find more about me and my work there. giantlifeskills.com. giantlifeskills.com.
It's been a real pleasure, Rob. Thank you so much for your time today. God bless you. And yeah, Rob Wright, everyone. It's been a real joy to hear your dreams and your visions.
Thank you so much, Matt. Really good to chat to you, man.
God bless you.